Hello, how you doing? And welcome back to the channel. So Munster are the champions of the URC. They beat the Stormers in Cape Town in what I thought was a brilliant game of rugby. Real arm wrestle. Felt like it could have gone either way, but they got the job done in what has been quite a remarkable run to the final for the Irish side. So drop a comment down below. Let me know what you make of Munster's triumph, the performance of both sides in this competition, and anything else that springs to mind or anything that I touch upon in the video. Always look forward to reading your comments. Like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. But let's get into it. So firstly, apologies for the slight delay in getting this kind of review video up there. Many of you might have seen that I was at Twickenham on Saturday for the Gallagher Premiership final, so it's just taken me a bit of time to go back and watch in full the Stormers against Munster, properly watch the game, evaluate it, and then get an opportunity to do the video. So that's the reason that it's on a Monday rather than over the weekend. But from my point of view, in terms of watching the game, it was well worth the wait. Because as I said in the intro, I thought it was a really, really good game. Wasn't necessarily free-flowing, was it? I believe I'm right in saying that they had quite a bit of rain last week in Cape Town. That probably affected the conditions and the pitch and parts of the game that we saw. But I don't think it took away from the enjoyment at all, because it was a match which came down to the closing stages. It could have gone either way. It was tight throughout. And as I say, not necessarily being a tri-fest or really free-flowing in sunny conditions, but a really, really entertaining game. And it was a really interesting match as well for different reasons. And I think Munster, on the balance of the 80 minutes, deserved to win, particularly when you consider that first half. That opening 40 was almost as dominant an opening 40 as you'll see, really, because Munster played all of the rugby. The Stormers had to get through a heck of a lot of defensive work. And it's actually quite interesting watching a game back when you know who the eventual winners are and knowing the score. Because I was watching the game and what was it at halftime? 7-12 to Munster. But I was there at halftime thinking, in another circumstance, if I didn't know the result of this game and that Munster were able to win it, I'll be looking at that first 40 and thinking, I just wonder whether Munster are going to end up regretting not taking more of their opportunities, because they were so dominant. They had, 2 tries disallowed. They had a third where Frisch just knocked it on just by the line as they were about to dab it down. So it was almost 3 scores, 3 tries that got away from them. And the one score that the Stormers had was an intercept, which they had early on in the game. Munster were that much more in charge of the game. And I think there was a few different reasons for that. And in that first half, as good as Munster were, and I'm going to come on to a few more things in just a moment that I thought Munster did really, really well. As good as the Irish side were, I thought the Stormers' game plan and execution of that game plan in the first half was pretty poor. I thought it was pretty disappointing. I think they'll probably look back on this game and think that they could have done a lot more in that first half, because it was a more even second half once they corrected a few things. But in particular in that first half, I thought their kicking was really quite poor, and their accuracy as well. They were kicking out on the full. They were box kicking a lot, but there wasn't enough of a chase. The box kicks were too long, and Munster were able to run it back at them, and Munster were just able to build up more and more phases in possession. And I think we actually saw that towards the end of the half when, I can't remember exactly the situation that happened, but I remember the Stormers almost turned the ball over, kicked it downfield, and there was just no chase, because I think they were probably absolutely knackered from the amount of defensive work they'd had to get through, because they'd been kicking the ball away a lot. The kicking game hadn't been particularly good, and their accuracy had let them down, so they hadn't been able to build any pressure on Munster. And another good example I thought of that actually was the final 5 minutes of the first half, which was where the Stormers were finally able to get a few phases in Munster's 22, and on 2 occasions they just kind of coughed up the ball. They kicked it away a little bit aimlessly at one point as well, and Munster were able to ride out the half and have the half-time lead. So yeah, there was a few interesting things in there from a Stormers point of view, which I think they would probably be a little bit disappointed with. But as I say, Munster were excellent. And speaking of which, I'm not sure I can remember the last time I've watched a game where a side have had so much clean ball at the breakdown. And I don't know whether the Stormers didn't pay too much attention to the breakdown or if it was how well Munster cleared out. But I was watching this game just looking at the clear outs from Munster. If you get an opportunity to watch the game back, look at time and time again where you think a Stormers defender is going to be in a great position to win the ball, and the clear out from Munster is so good. It completely knocks the defenders out the way, and it gave Conor Murray, or at different point in the game after he'd gone off, it just gave them really clean, often quick ball. I was so impressed with that. I think it's a bit more of a nuance of the game, really, going back and watching a specific area like that. But it is worth doing if you get an opportunity, because I thought Munster were brilliant at just keeping that such a clean area of their game. And it was really, really impressive. But as I have said already in the video, so half-time, 7-12 in favour of Munster. The Stormers were better in the second half. And we saw, I thought, a much more even game in the second half. It was a bit more of an arm wrestle. Stormers changed up the way they approached it in terms of their tactical kicking. I think I'm right. I don't actually know if the stats back this up, but from my viewing, it felt like there was a lot less box kicking and a bit more kicking from the back three and things like that. They changed up their kicking game, and I think it did make it more even. Munster weren't able to dominate the ball as much as they were in the first half. So it was a more even game. The Stormers were then able to have a bit more of the ball themselves. They got themselves the try as well. Very, very tactical second half, but it just made for the drama of the closing stages, really, because it was such an even game. It felt like something was going to give, right? The final sort of 10, 15 minutes when the Stormers had the lead, and neither side really had heaps of opportunities. And then it came with the charge down, and Munster were able to charge the ball down. That gave them the possession, and then they were able to execute it with that try in the corner, which ultimately ended up being the winning score. So it felt to me, despite Munster's dominance in the first half, that it was still a game in that second half that could have gone either way. The Stormers obviously had that driving maul at the end that Munster were able to take to ground, and that was it. The game was done. But yeah, I just think there was quite a few different interesting things in there. You can leave a comment down below on if I've missed anything. I was making a few different notes as I went along. I wasn't sure about Munster's second try, on whether there was a forward pass maybe 5 or 6 phases before. I can't remember the exact amount. It was out on the wing before they actually got themselves closer to the try line. I thought possibly that maybe there was a forward pass, but it's kind of by the by, isn't it? All games have these small details, really. And I suppose the final couple of points really to speak of here is, first of all, when was the last time a team had a run as impressive as this to get to a final and win? In that it's virtually been 6 away games, is it, for Munster? I think. Something like that. 6 away games for Munster, where they had to win them to get themselves into the playoffs in the first place. They've had to go, I think this was their 3rd trip to South Africa. They beat the Stormers in their last trip in round 17. They obviously went away to Leinster to win in the semi-final, and then they've gone back to Cape Town in the final against the Stormers to win it. I can't think of too many occasions in club rugby where a side has had that sort of fixture list, that sort of daunting fixture list, and been able to come out on top. The only one really that sprung to mind, probably because it's a bit more recent, was when Harlequins won the Premiership, when they'd been pretty poor earlier on in the season. They sacked their coach, Paul Gustard. They had a complete change around, ended up getting into the playoffs in 4th. They were 28-5, 28-3 down away to Bristol in the semi-final, came back and won the semi-final, and then played out a brilliant game against the Exeter Chiefs at Twickenham to win the Premiership a couple of years ago. That's the only one that really sprung to mind, and even that I don't think is quite as impressive as what Munster have done here, really, because I think the quality of opposition and in terms of that travel to South Africa that Munster have had to do is more impressive. So let me know if there's a better example you can think of, but I think this is one of the great runs to winning silverware in domestic rugby, certainly that we've seen in recent years. That's kind of it now for the video. The final point that I'll finish on is just what a great sign this is for Ireland. Leinster weren't able to do the job. Munster knocked them out, and then you've still got an Irish side winning away in Cape Town. Yeah, I thought they were really impressive, well-deserved. Graham Rowntree at the end couldn't believe it. The Munster fans that travelled out, a decent number of them as well, with only 2 weeks' notice to get to Cape Town and support, was awesome. As I say, from the Stormers' perspective, I think disappointing with the opening 40, but across the 80, I don't think there can be too many complaints that Munster aren't worthy champions. And from most of the things I've seen from South African fans, I think for the most part, people would be in agreement with me on that. But if you're not, or even if you are, leave a comment down below. I look forward to reading them on this game, on what I think was an excellent, excellent URC final. Subscribe to the channel as well, like the video, and I'll see you in the next one.